move to the Trojans inside linebackers unit. So Mark, again, to remind folks that are watching or listening on a podcast, again, we're only going to put in players that participate in spring ball, which is a little unfair to Eric Gentry, because I think, Mark, you brought it up. He could end up being a rush end. And that's going to be the disappointment, I think, of the spring for me, is where he could play if he was healthy and how that might affect other players. But Mark, who do you got there in the inside?
So because you just mentioned Gentry isn't going to be available to participate, I'm going to go Mason Cobb, Shane Lee. Behind them, I've got Rajon Davis, Jamil Muhammad, and then the depth is we're going to start with Taka Curtis. I don't know where he's going to be by the end of spring. I'm going to feel really good with him sometime halfway through the season. But Taka Curtis, Eric Gentry, once he's healthy, we can figure out what's going on with him. Chris Thompson Jr., Carson Tabaracci, does he get a chance to show everybody why he transferred from Utah last year? He was a running back, I believe, out of high school, or when he got to Utah at least. So again, another athlete back there to play around with. And again, with Gentry not being available, these guys will get a chance to show the staff what they can do. I'm interested to see Mason Cobb with these other guys. Is Shane Lee going to be a starter by the time fall camp rolls around?
I think that's a great question. And Eric, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, just jumping into my sort of post-spring depth chart, I think Mason Cobb at middle linebacker, and Taka Curtis right behind him, and then Shane Lee weak side backed up by Rajon Davis. That's kind of how I see the top four here. Again, Eric Gentry, I don't think is necessarily just going to lose his job if he's not available. He proved last year he can make plays. There's some things, like every defensive player for USC, where you got to show improvement and do things like that. But he's around the ball. He makes plays. He's a guy that I think you want to get on the field significantly this fall. Chris Thompson Jr., I'm interested in. He's kind of hit whenever he's been available, and the USC linebacker group could use some of that. Garrison Madden, I think, like with what we saw, just sort of physical development from Devin Tompkins, where you start thinking that guy looks like he could be something. Garrison Madden flashes a little bit of that as well. I'm excited to see him kind of year two. And then, yeah, Carson Tabaracci, it might take him a little bit to fully grasp that spot. But again, athletically and just in terms of being kind of an overall football player, he's a guy that you could see out on the field. So again, it's like defensive line. I think you feel much better about the depth here, especially because, again, Shane Lee is not an elite athlete playing linebacker, but confident, capable, has done it. Mason Cobb, same kind of thing. I think Mason Cobb maybe a little bit better in terms of running ability and coverage and that kind of stuff. So there are guys, there are sort of professional guys out there that have done it before and bring a lot of success kind of at that spot. So I think SC's in a pretty good spot there. And then Taka Curtis is just all potential right now. And you wanted him to get there as quickly as possible. So I could see this being kind of a fire hose spring for him. Hey, get out there, give him as much as you can to get him as ready as quickly as possible this fall.
Chris, what are you looking at? Who's your two linebackers on the inside?
Well, Mason Cobb's taken one of those spots. I don't think there's any question about that. Come fall, Eric Gentry is going to be the other starter, which is strange because that means you're going to have a two-time captain who doesn't start on his football team. That's weird. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But Shane Lee is a productive player whose value comes probably more in the leadership he brings than it does in the plays he's going to make on the field. Although he can make plays, it's not like Shane Lee's a bad football player. He's not. Gentry, the disappointment with Gentry for me is not that we're not going to get to see him try rush in. I don't think he's going to be at rush in. The disappointment for me is Eric Gentry needed to add 20 pounds, and I don't know whether he's going to be able to do that with his ankle problem. And that's a problem, because I think there are two guys on this defense who have superstar potential. We'll talk about another one in a minute, who need to put on about 15, 20 pounds. In Gentry's case, maybe more like 30 pounds. But Tackett Curtis is going to play a lot, and he's going to play a lot come the fall. I'm really high on this kid. I just don't know that you see this sort of athleticism and aggressiveness from a high school linebacker very often. He's going to get on the field. Rajon Davis has a large cheering section with USC fan base. I would love to see him make plays and get on the field. I don't know what to make of him. You've had two different sets of coaches who seem to be underwhelmed. I don't know what to make of that, but it was one thing when before the new crew came in with Lincoln Riley, you could say, well, I don't know, he's sort of in their doghouse, but now he gets a second chance. He didn't get a second chance with Riley and Grinch either. That's a pretty big red flag for me, especially when you have a group that, especially when Gentry got hurt, wasn't making any plays. I mean, when Eric Gentry went out, the team is badly in need of somebody who can come in and play. And the coaches still didn't think Rajon Davis could do it. That's a giant red flag for me. I don't know what it is. Garrison Madden, as Eric mentioned, is a really interesting prospect. I mean, he wasn't that highly recruited coming out of high school, but this is a guy who ran what, a 10-700 meter. I mean, that's corner speed, good speed for a corner. And he's a big guy. Having Gentry and Tackett Curtis and Garrison Madden and Mason Cobb on the field gives USC a whole lot more speed and athleticism than they've seen there in a long, long time. So I think this group will be better this year. But the only sure thing I see right now in the spring is that Mason Cobb is going to lock down one of those spots and hold it throughout the fall.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Chris. I think Mason Cobb, you can just shoo him in. There's not much question in my mind that he'll be one of them. I will say that, again, I hate to belabor on the Eric Gentry position, but Eric Gentry is going to start one way or the other, no matter what his weight issue is. He's a difference maker when he's in there. So whether he starts at defense at the rush end or whether he's on the inside, remains to be seen. But he's going to be starting somewhere. But for our purposes, of course, we're trying to put people in positions at the end of spring ball and not where they're going to end up in the fall. That's for another discussion. I do think that Tackett Curtis is a rare athlete. Size, speed, academic excellence. It's everything is there. It's like Grudegood. And when you give a guy like that much of a chance, and the good news is, since SC's first half of their schedule is not exactly brutal like the second half, Tackett could ease his way into it. I don't think it's going to be a problem much. I think any inexperience he shows, he'll make up for it quickly. I don't think he's going to make the same mistake twice. Again, I think the wild card here, just in getting playing time, is Rajon Davis. I happen to agree with Chris. It's a red flag, two different coaching staffs. But for Rajon to do what he did in the Cotton Bowl, it raised eyebrows. For those of you that are big supporters of Rajon, you had to be excited. Hopefully the kid is excited. He knows he's going to have a shot, probably a bigger shot, maybe because Gentry's not in there, but we'll see. We'll wish him the best of luck. But I could still see Shane Lee starting it's not really, if it was a game situation, it's not who starts the game, it's who finishes the game. So just, might work out better that Shane just starts, but I hope gets better in areas that have been deficient for him. And I think what I like about Lincoln Riley is when he says, don't put the coaching staff in a 50-50 position where we have to make the decision. We're not always right, which is a big kudos to me or to him for making that comment. So we'll see how it's handled.